The day my mother called me a burden was the same day I decided she needed to see exactly what her worthless daughter had become. If you've ever wanted justice served cold, you'll love what happens next. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that will leave you speechless. Success was never supposed to be part of my story, at least according to my mother. Growing up in a modest neighborhood in Boston, I learned early that nothing I did would ever be good enough for Margaret Winters. While other kids received praise for A- grades, I got lectures about the points I'd missed. When I won second place in the science fair, she wondered aloud why I couldn't have worked harder for first. And the day I got my acceptance letter to a state university instead of an Ivy League school, she barely looked up from her magazine. "A waste of money," she said. "You'll probably drop out anyway." I'm Camille Winters, and for 28 years, I lived in the shadow of my mother's disappointment. Looking back, I can't pinpoint exactly when I started believing her, that I was destined for mediocrity, that my dreams were too big, that I was, fundamentally, a burden. Maybe it was after my father left when I was 9, and she started reminding me daily how expensive I was to raise alone. Or perhaps during high school when she accidentally threw away my art portfolio because drawing wasn't a real career. The apartment I grew up in was small but immaculate. My mother insisted on perfection in our surroundings, even if she couldn't find it in me. The walls were beige, the furniture practical, and family photos conspicuously absent. Instead, there were framed certificates from her job as a hospital administrator, awards for efficiency and excellence that she made sure I noticed. Despite everything, I managed to put myself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs. My mother didn't attend my graduation. She had a conference that weekend. "Something actually important," she explained over the phone. After college, I landed an entry-level position at a small tech startup in San Francisco. Moving across the country was both terrifying and liberating. For the first time, I could breathe without someone measuring how much air I was taking up. The company, Neurovance, developed software for hospitals to streamline patient care, ironically similar to systems my mother had implemented in her career. I started in customer support, taking calls and troubleshooting issues. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. My boss, Diana Chen, was everything my mother wasn't: encouraging, patient, and genuinely invested in her employees' growth. After 6 months, when I tentatively suggested improvements to our user interface based on common customer complaints, she didn't dismiss me. Instead, she invited me to present my ideas to the development team. My hands shook as I stood before the team. My mother's voice echoed in my head. "You'll embarrass yourself. You don't have the qualifications. You're wasting everyone's time." But I spoke anyway, and they listened. That presentation changed everything. I was promoted to product liaison, then product manager within 2 years. As Neurovance grew, so did my confidence and responsibilities. When our software caught the attention of a major healthcare conglomerate, I led the presentation that secured our biggest contract yet. The company expanded rapidly after that. We moved to sleek offices with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. Our staff quadrupled. And last year, at 28, I was named Vice President of Product Development. Throughout those years, my communication with my mother dwindled to obligatory holiday calls and the occasional email. She never asked about my career beyond, "Still at that computer place?" I never volunteered the information either. Some part of me was saving it all up, my success, my vindication, though I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening in April. I was working late, finalizing details for Neurovance's annual charity gala, a black-tie fundraiser for children's hospitals that had become the highlight of the San Francisco medical community's social calendar. As VP, I was heading the planning committee this year. My phone rang with my mother's name on the screen. Unusual, since she rarely called outside our scheduled holiday check-ins. "Hello?" I answered, trying to keep the surprise from my voice. "Camille," she said, her tone as crisp as ever. "I've been laid off." No greeting, no preamble. Typical Margaret. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely shocked. My mother had been at Boston Memorial for over 20 years. Her job had always seemed as permanent as her disappointment in me. Budget cuts, she continued. They're restructuring the entire administrative department, bringing in younger people with fresh perspectives. That's terrible, I said. Do you have savings to— Of course I have savings, she cut me off. I'm not irresponsible, but I need to find something new quickly. The healthcare industry isn't what it used to be. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Then she said something that made me freeze. I was thinking of coming out to California for a while, job hunting. The market might be better there. My stomach dropped. In 8 years, my mother had never once suggested visiting me. You want to come to San Francisco? I repeated, certain I'd misheard. Not permanently, she clarified quickly. Just to network. I have some contacts at California Pacific, and I could stay with you while I look, save on hotel costs. Of course. It wasn't about seeing me. It was about convenience. I travel a lot for work, I lied. My apartment is barely big enough for me. Still in that studio? She asked, and I could hear the judgment creeping into her voice. I thought you'd have moved up by now. What do they pay you at that place? And there it was, the familiar sting, the assumption of my mediocrity. Actually, I began, then stopped myself. What was the point? She'd never believed in me before. Why would she start now? Never mind, I said. When were you thinking of coming? Next week, if possible. I've already started applying for positions. Next week. The gala was in 10 days. I have a big work event coming up, I said cautiously. Oh? For the first time, she sounded mildly interested. What sort of event? I hesitated, then decided to tell her a partial truth. A fundraiser. For children's hospitals. How nice, she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. Will you be serving drinks or checking coats? The casual cruelty of her assumption hit me like a physical blow. 8 years of building a career, of proving myself, of becoming someone I was proud to be, and she still saw me as nothing more than a server. A burden. A disappointment. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Actually, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, I could probably get you on staff for the event, if you're interested in making some extra money while you're here. There was a pause on the other end of the line. You mean, working at the fundraiser? She asked. Yes. They need additional servers for the evening. It pays well for one night's work. Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear her weighing her pride against her bank account. I suppose that would be helpful, she finally said. If you're sure you can arrange it. I'm sure, I replied, a plan already forming in my mind. I have some influence with the planning committee. The week passed in a blur of preparation, both for the gala and for my mother's arrival. I arranged for her to stay in the guest room of my 3-bedroom condo in Pacific Heights, a far cry from the studio apartment she'd imagined. I considered hiding the evidence of my success, removing the awards and press clippings that decorated my home office, concealing the truth for just a little longer. But something stopped me. She didn't notice. When I picked her up from the airport, her first words weren't, "I've missed you," or even, "Thank you for having me." Instead, she looked me up and down and said, "You've gained weight." I bit back a retort. "It's good to see you too, Mom." The drive to my condo was filled with her commentary on everything from the traffic, horrendous, I don't know how you stand it, to the homeless population, someone should really do something, to the cost of living, no wonder you can't afford a decent place. When we pulled into the private garage beneath my building, her monologue paused momentarily. "This is where you live?" she asked, eyeing the sleek modern exterior and uniformed doorman. "For about 3 years now," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. The elevator required a key card for access to the residential floors. As we ascended to the 12th floor, I could feel her reassessing, recalculating. When I unlocked the door to my condo, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, her silence was more satisfying than any praise could have been. "The guest room is this way," I said, leading her down the hallway past my office, where my VP nameplate was clearly visible on the desk. "Bathrooms en suite. Make yourself comfortable. I need to make some work calls." I left her there, standing in the middle of the space that so clearly contradicted everything she'd assumed about my life. Part of me hoped she'd ask. About my job, my success, the journey I'd taken to get here. But by dinner, it became clear she had no intention of acknowledging what was right in front of her. Instead, she talked about her job search, her former colleagues, her plans for networking in San Francisco. She mentioned the gala only once, to confirm the time she should arrive at the venue. "The staff entrance is in the back," I told her. "They'll have your name on the list. Margaret Winters." She nodded, and I could see her mentally preparing for the role, confident that even as a server, she would outshine everyone around her. As the evening of the gala approached, a gnawing doubt began to creep in. Was I really going to go through with this? Would humiliating my mother actually make me feel better, or would it just make me more like her? I considered coming clean, telling her everything, inviting her to attend the gala as my guest instead. But then came the morning of the event. I was reviewing my speech in the kitchen when she emerged from the guest room. "I hope this job leads to something more permanent," she said, pouring herself coffee. "It's not ideal, but it's a start. Better than what you were doing at my age." And just like that, my resolve hardened. One night of letting her see what her burden of a daughter had become. The gala was being held at the Fairmont, one of San Francisco's most iconic hotels. As a committee member, I arrived early to oversee final preparations. The ballroom was transformed into an elegant wonderland, with crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over tables draped in midnight blue. I wore a custom gown in deep sapphire, my hair swept up in an elegant chignon. Around my neck hung a simple diamond pendant, a gift to myself when I made VP. I looked nothing like the small-town girl who'd left Boston with nothing but a suitcase and student loan debt. I looked like I belonged. My colleagues arrived, the CEO and his wife, board members, investors, hospital administrators from across the country. I greeted them confidently, making introductions, accepting compliments on the event's organization. All the while, I kept glancing toward the staff entrance, waiting. And then I saw her. My mother, dressed in the black pants and white shirt I'd told her was the server uniform, her hair pulled back severely, a small name tag on her lapel. She was being briefed by the catering manager, nodding with the same efficiency she'd always brought to everything. Our eyes met across the room. For a split second, confusion clouded her features. Then recognition. Then something I'd never seen on my mother's face before. Shock. I smiled politely and turned back to my conversation with the chief of pediatrics from UCSF Medical Center, but I could feel her eyes on me throughout the evening. As she served champagne and hors d'oeuvres, as she cleared plates and refilled water glasses, as she stood against the wall during speeches. Always watching, always processing. The moment I'd been both dreading and anticipating came halfway through dinner. My mother approached our table to serve the main course. She placed a plate in front of me with trembling hands. "Thank you," I said politely, as I had to every server that evening. Her eyes met mine, filled with questions she couldn't ask in this setting. I held her gaze for a moment, then turned to the CEO seated beside me. "Richard, I think we should move up the announcement about the children's wing. People are already emotional from the patient testimonials." My mother lingered a moment too long before moving to the next guest. I could feel her presence behind me, could almost hear the wheels turning in her mind. When it was time for my speech, I approached the podium with steady steps. The room fell silent as I adjusted the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Camille Winters, Vice President of Product Development at Neurovance." From my vantage point, I could see my mother standing near the kitchen doors, a tray forgotten in her hands. 8 years ago, I joined this company as a customer service representative with nothing but determination and a belief that technology could transform healthcare. Today, our systems are implemented in over 300 hospitals nationwide, reducing administrative errors by 62% and, most importantly, giving medical professionals more time with their patients. I continued my speech, outlining our achievements, announcing our newest initiative, a specialized software system for children's hospitals that would be donated rather than sold. I thanked our team, our investors, the medical professionals who provided invaluable feedback. And finally, I said, I want to thank everyone who ever doubted what we could accomplish. Sometimes, the greatest motivation comes from those who are certain you'll fail. My eyes found my mother's across the crowded room. Sometimes, being told you're a burden is exactly what you need to hear to prove you can carry the weight of your own dreams. The audience applauded enthusiastically, unaware of the private message hidden within my words. As I returned to my seat, I caught a glimpse of my mother slipping through the kitchen doors out of sight. I didn't see her again until the event was winding down. Guests were departing, the band was playing their final numbers, and staff were beginning to clear the emptying tables. I was saying goodbye to the last board members when I felt a presence at my elbow. "Ms. Winters," said the catering manager, looking uncomfortable. "One of our servers has asked to be dismissed early." "A Margaret Winters? She says she's related to you." My heart sank. "Yes, she's my mother." "Where is she?" "In the staff room, collecting her things." I thanked him and made my way through the kitchen to the small room where servers stored their belongings. My mother stood with her back to the door, putting on her coat. "Mom," I said softly. She turned, and I was struck by how old she suddenly looked. The harsh overhead lighting accentuated every line on her face, every gray strand in her hair. For the first time, I saw her not as the towering figure of my childhood, but as what she was, a woman in her 60s who had just been publicly humiliated by her daughter. "Was this fun for you?" she asked, her voice quiet but sharp. "Did you enjoy watching me serve your friends?" I leaned against the doorframe, suddenly exhausted. That wasn't the plan. Then what was the plan, Camille? To punish me? To prove something? "When you called," I said slowly, "and assumed I was still struggling, still failing, when you asked if I'd be serving drinks at my company's gala, something snapped. 8 years, Mom. 8 years of building a career, and you never once asked what I was actually doing. You just assumed I was the same disappointment I'd always been." She looked away, her jaw tight. "So this was revenge?" "No," I said, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. "This was... I don't know what this was." We stood in silence for a long moment, the sounds of the kitchen staff cleaning up filtering through the thin walls. "You could have just told me," she finally said, "about your job, your success. Would you have believed me?" She didn't answer immediately, which was an answer in itself. "I need to go," she said, buttoning her coat. "I'll get a cab back to your place." "Mom, wait!" But she was already pushing past me, her shoulders rigid, her steps quick. I let her go, knowing that following her now would only make things worse. I stayed at the Fairmont until everything was packed up and the ballroom returned to its original state. It was nearly 2 in the morning when I finally made it back to my condo. I kicked off my heels in the entryway, expecting to find my mother waiting up to continue our confrontation. Instead, the guest room door was closed, a sliver of light visible underneath. I changed into pajamas and poured myself a glass of wine, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions the evening had produced. Had I gone too far? Probably. Had it solved anything? Definitely not. Would I apologize in the morning? I wasn't sure. As I passed the guest room on my way to bed, I noticed something on the floor, a folded piece of paper that had been slipped under the door. My name was written on it in my mother's precise handwriting. With a sense of dread, I picked it up and unfolded it. "Camille," the note began, "I'm writing this because I don't trust myself to say these things without turning them into an argument." I sank down against the wall in the hallway, wineglass forgotten beside me. "What you did tonight was cruel. I won't pretend it wasn't. But I'm not writing to chastise you or to claim I didn't deserve it. I'm writing because tonight forced me to see something I've been avoiding for a very long time. I failed you as a mother." My breath caught. In 28 years, I had never heard my mother admit failure at anything. When your father left us, he didn't just leave a hole in our lives. He left with my belief that anything good could last. I was terrified, Camille. Terrified of losing everything. Terrified that I wouldn't be enough. Terrified that you would suffer because of my inadequacies. So I pushed. I pushed you to be better than me, to need less, to want less, to expect less, because I was convinced the world would disappoint you as thoroughly as it had disappointed me. I thought I was preparing you for reality. Instead, I was punishing you for my own fears. I wiped away tears I hadn't realized were falling. Tonight, watching you command that room, seeing the respect in everyone's eyes when you spoke, I realized that despite everything, you became extraordinary. Not because of my pushing, but perhaps in spite of it. You built a life I couldn't have imagined for you because I was too afraid to imagine anything beyond survival. I won't ask for your forgiveness. What I did, how I treated you, isn't something that can be erased with a simple apology. But I want you to know that I see you now. I really see you. And I am, for perhaps the first time in your life, genuinely proud. I'll be leaving in the morning. I've booked a flight back to Boston. This visit has made it clear that I have my own work to do before I can be the mother you deserve. With love and long overdue admiration, Mom. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke to sunlight streaming through my blinds and the sound of movement in the kitchen. Pulling on a robe, I steeled myself for the confrontation I'd avoided the night before. My mother stood at the counter, dressed in the same clothes she'd worn to the airport, her suitcase by the door. She was making coffee, enough for two, I noticed. "Morning," I said, my voice rough from lack of sleep. She turned, coffee pot in hand. "Good morning." We regarded each other cautiously, like boxers assessing whether the other was ready for another round. "I got your note," I said finally. She nodded, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "I meant what I wrote." "So did I admitted. "Last night, at the podium. About using doubt as motivation." A ghost of a smile touched her lips as she handed me a mug. Then I suppose I served some purpose after all. It wasn't quite a joke, but it was close enough that I felt some of the tension dissipate. "You're really leaving?" I asked, nodding toward her suitcase. "I think it's for the best," she said, sipping her coffee. "We both need some time." I wanted to argue, to tell her to stay, that we could work this out. But the truth was, she was right. What had happened between us couldn't be fixed in a day or a week. "I'm sorry," I finally said. "About the gala, it was childish." She turned to face me. "Yes, it was. And it was hurtful. But it was also illuminating." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes we need a shock to see what's been in front of us all along." Her phone buzzed with a notification. "The car is downstairs," she said, picking up her suitcase. I walked her to the door, a strange sense of déjà vu washing over me. How many times had we said goodbye like this? Always with a distance between us that seemed unbridgeable. But this time felt different. "I'll call you," I said as she stepped into the hallway. "When you get back to Boston. We can talk." She nodded. "I'd like that." And then, awkwardly, tentatively, she opened her arms. I stepped into her embrace, feeling the unfamiliar contours of my mother's body against mine. "I am proud of you, Camille," she whispered. I should have said it sooner. And more often. I held her tighter, feeling something crack open inside me. Not breaking, but expanding. Making room for a new kind of relationship, one built on truth rather than expectations. "Safe travels," I said as we pulled apart. She picked up her suitcase and walked toward the elevator. Just before the doors closed, she smiled. A real smile without reservation or calculation. I smiled back, raising my hand in a small wave. 3 months later, she called with news. She was coming back to San Francisco for a conference. This time, when I picked her up at the airport, her first words weren't criticism, but a genuine, "I'm happy to be here." We're still finding our way toward something that resembles a healthy relationship. It's not perfect. There are still moments of tension, old patterns that threaten to reassert themselves. But the difference is that now, we can acknowledge these moments. My mother had called me a burden once, and in a strange way, that label had been the catalyst for a transformation neither of us could have predicted. It had led us here, not to perfect understanding or complete healing, but to the beginning of a path that might eventually lead to both.